Welcome one and all. We're in episode 4 now of Meet Me at Brunch. My name is Nick. I work here at Brunch as an account manager for the direct sales team. And this is John Clark.
I'm one of the directors here at Brunch and have the title of Director of Wine, which is all encompassing, but...
I was going to say, what do you do?
Well, this is very good. Touché. Currently, I'm heading up the direct team, but we also have a range of other projects on the go. It's never a slow-moving beast.
Today is episode 4, and we're going to be talking about wine trends, what's hot, what's not, ins and outs for 2025. The stock market is a bit of a hot button issue at the moment, but what to buy, what to sell, what to hold. And I believe we're doing a winey guessy today, John.
Yeah, so I'll pour that for you.
I've got the white jumper on, so if you wouldn't mind for it, that'd be good.
There you go. So, well, first of all, I think we can safely say it's a red wine.
It's a red. Deep ruby with a bit of orange.
Yeah.
Not orange, but, you know, kind of not bright red. Some sort of forest flora.
Yeah.
Savoury, spicy.
I think the colour in the nose is pointing me in one direction. Okay, you know, I have been wrong before.
It hasn't got the craziest amount of pinosity, as we say, but I think it might be in that
genre.
That genre.
Although we can be fooled. There could be a Pinot Meunier or even a Gamay potentially. They might be trying to stitch us up in that regard, but certainly on the lighter side of the wine spectrum.
Have you got a...
I do, but let's not jump straight to that.
Yeah, no, let's tease it out.
Yeah, I think
this podcast could be a 2-parter.
Indeed, you keep going and going. We do have the full bottle here, so.
So super spicy on the palate.
Yeah.
Super fresh, crunchy, bright red fruit, a little bit of that kind of earthy savouriness.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little bit of that sort of pine needle, pine leaf.
Lovely concentration, really soft, very expressive tannins as well. So I think I'm going to go cooler climate, obviously, but maybe a little island off the south.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Of Australia, down in Tassie, where some of the best Pinot Noir is coming from at the moment.
So we're talking trends in the wine industry, and I guess we're going to be talking about varietals. We're going to be talking about sort of business trends, consumer trends, all those sorts of things. So our first segment today is what's hot, trends that wineries should be paying attention to.
You know, the broad trend, unfortunately for everyone listening, people aren't drinking as much as they used to. And I think we've seen that post-COVID, but this is a trend that's been going for probably 40 years now, in particularly the developed wine drinking communities. And by that, I mean, you know, Australia, the UK, all of Europe, even Argentina and countries like that. So that's an unfortunate trend that we're all dealing with. But to counter that, the real positive aspect of that for, well, all the wineries we work with is people drink more premium wine, and you know, where we're not in the bulk wine space, when you know, we tend to work with premium wines from premium regions, and that's where people are drinking and spending their money, which is great for us as well.
Yeah, totally. So the broader trend is people being more health conscious and consuming less, and that's macro going into not just beverages, but food as well.
Yeah.
So moderation, but also for our industry specifically, it's treating yourself as well.
Yeah. So that's a huge part of the trends we're seeing, and people drinking less, drinking better, but also drinking a variation of wines rather than traditionally people would, you know, set and forget, like they'd drink Barossa Shiraz or they'd drink McLaren Vale Shiraz. Now you're seeing consumers drink across the gamut.
Yeah.
So people drinking, you know, lighter body styles, which we'll touch on because that certainly is another trend that is emerging, but alternate grape varietals, people dipping their hands or toes into different sort of styles is another big trend that is emerging, not just in Australia, but as we touched on, around the world.
Yeah, I think novelty is a big thing. I think people are bored of the same old varieties and styles. And so you're starting to see alternate varietals come into play in a big way. I think everyone's had the experience at their local wine bar where they go down the list and they see Shiraz, Pinot, Grenache, Chardonnay, whatever, and then the whoever's serving you will say, "Oh, but I've got this cool new thing," and you go, "Oh, it's a Picpoul, so let's give that a try," because I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we've seen, particularly in Melbourne, where the Brunch is a Melbourne-based business with offices in Chicago, Nelson in New Zealand, and we have brokers throughout Australia. But what you're certainly seeing here in Melbourne is those lighter body wines are the wines that really pull off wine lists now. Unfortunately for South Australian producers, Melbourne on-premise is probably not your number one market or target market, particularly in the inner ring of restaurants. And being in Fitzroy, it's certainly, I don't think Barossa Shiraz would be the number one pourer at, to say the Standard Hotel or other venues around here. You're looking at emerging varietals like Sangiovese, Pinot Noir certainly in Victoria is the number one go-to wine.
We'll stay with what's hot. So I think in the late 2010s and the early part of the 20s, started to see Pet Nats and chilled reds come on. Has anything stuck around that was a trend in the last 5 years that's hanging on? I think people are still chilling their reds. I think that's
absolutely. Longer, hotter summers where people do like to put reds in the fridge. It's probably something people did but didn't talk about doing previously, whereas now it's much more accessible and those lighter style wines are more adaptable to being a bit cooler. I think the natural wine movement, unfortunately, particularly in Australia, has had its moment, and that sort of coincided with COVID, where Pet Nats were going wild, and through Edinburgh Gardens everyone had a Pet Nat, half of which were probably drinkable. And I think there's a combination of things there. It's a really interesting style, but there's a huge amount of producers producing it and having a crack at it. And
low barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Not as sort of scrutinized from a classic wine judging perspective.
No, absolutely. I think people were probably a bit more open to trying different styles through that period, probably a little bit more disposable income rolling around the system where people were happy to try a wine. Whereas I think combining with the sort of not drinking so much is a bit of a flight to safety.
I don't have the numbers on it, but when I'm out, people are still definitely trying Pet Nats at wine bars, usually sort of more contemporary style wine bars, but they're definitely still there, but I would imagine it's like at best a plateau, that the interest is capped at a certain point.
Yeah.
And at worst, it's probably on the way down.
I'd say so. And the other one that's hot right now is spritz style wines,
Oh, that Zoncello. It's so good.
And I think Zoncello came, and I think 400 friends have followed it.
Yeah, totally.
So you have to turn it around in about 3 minutes to beat the market. So, fridges are full of these lemon spritzes, there's watermelon spritzes, anything you can spritz with a wine jumped into that category where Pet Nat sort of left off.
Yeah.
And it's an exciting category because it is a wine, but it's adjacent and it's a bit more playful.
Tick some of the same boxes that I think people had been looking for with Pet Nats and modern trends. It's lower in alcohol, so 8%, that ticks that box. It's fun, it's lively. There's not so much scrutiny on like the quality and the story and the history.
Yeah.
So it's a fun category. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
And as we'll touch on moving forward, like it gets younger people into the wine category, like not in the pure wine category, so to speak, but it gets them on that road.
Also a great music festival beverage. You've got to be eco-conscious, obviously, because taking glass to a festival can sometimes be a bit of a no-no. But if you are well planned, fill up a few drink bottles with Zoncello.
There we go.
Just walk around a music festival and sip away.
You've heard it here first.
So that is what's hot. There is also a prompt here about how wine is being purchased and consumed, John.
The big change is it's just purchased everywhere. Like there is so many retailers, subscription service, online retailers, restaurants, any number, wineries as well, of course, direct to consumer, which is a big one. There's so many variations and options and way people buy it. So you're seeing just so much competition. Direct to consumer has been a huge push through the last few years, and wineries really taking control of their market, which is hugely important. It's a variation of where people are buying wine, which is really, really interesting.
Are there any channels that you have seen a big drop-off in recent times?
Online had its big bounce, and I'm thinking more of the subscription services in that, like big behemoth of the Endeavour brands is still huge. They're huge buyer, maker, owner of wineries,
dominator of shelf space.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's interesting. As we touched on before, direct to consumers is really launching. The tools are there. Like it's not something where 15 years ago where you were captured by your region or people passing by. Email marketing, phone sales. You've got text message marketing, digital marketing. All these sort of methods where people can engage with their consumers directly.
Yeah.
And wine tourism. People are going to wineries, maybe even buying wine. Like they're just going because there's so many great restaurants at wineries. It's experience based. It's not just you turn up and stand at the bar and people serve you 6 or 7 different wines.
Yeah.
You've got to book in.
Greeted by the cellar door staff who are all lovely and friendly and know everything about their portfolio in the region.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to a cellar door over the weekend on the peninsula. I went to Estonia.
Yeah.
The staff there were lovely. They knew like every bit of the Estonia history in great detail. And I was with 2 Muggle friends who aren't necessarily in the wine industry, and they just fell in love with the story instantly.
Yeah.
It's not an untapped resource, but it's just providing customers with a reason to subscribe in a direct-to-consumer context instead of just buying from the bottler or buying in those kind of old stuffy ways.
And I think what you're seeing, particularly with Mornington's a great example of that, is it's almost a tourism region now, a bit like what the Napa would be in California. The only place you can buy the wines is at the cellar door.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, they still have some levels of distribution, but their cellar door is the focus point for their business. We had a colleague up in Canberra, again, Canberra wines. It's not one you see a huge amount on wine lists in Melbourne or Sydney, but it is, you know, really sold direct to consumer in those markets. So, you know, I think more and more of these, particularly close to a big regional city with Melbourne and Canberra and Sydney, these types of regions are becoming more and more important to be purchased direct from the wineries.
At the risk of being negative or overly negative, if we've championed all the things that are hot at the moment, all the latest and greatest trends, what is not? What's losing steam? What stock are you selling?
I think if you are, producing wines under $10, it's not a great time.
Yeah.
As we touched on, this is not an Australian thing. There is just too much wine in the world.
Yeah.
That's a real struggle.
Yeah.
How to make that work, particularly in Australia as a high cost market. Labour costs a huge amount, production costs a huge amount, glass costs a huge amount. Everything seems to be costing more and more, electricity to run these things. Going across to South Australia, although, huge adaptations already, like those richer style reds have struggled, but in saying that, I think there's still huge opportunity for those within certain channels. There's some online retailers that really play into that space with some heavy reds, richer reds.
Yeah.
And also Endeavour is, a big player in that sort of space. I think also that you've seen a huge evolution in the way they make wines in say the Barossa or the warmer climate South Australian regions. Whereas, traditionally they were 15, 16% alcohol in oak for years and years. Whereas obviously that type of thing has a huge cost associated with it.
Yeah.
So you're seeing much more early release styles, and the alcohol's coming down. They are warm climates, so they're always going to be quite high. But there has been an opportunity to see them drop off. And if you went to McLaren Vale and didn't talk about Grenache, you're almost allowed in. There are varietals that are sort of starting to take off.
Yeah, it is funny anecdotally from all the producers that we talk to. I don't think anybody's wholesale abandoning making big Shirazes and Grenaches if that's what they've planted their flag in. But, regions like McLaren Vale, things like Fiano are almost not even an alternative varietal at the moment.
Absolutely.
They're as mainstream as it gets, playing with things like Pecorino and Picpoul and all that kind of stuff. And then making the same variety reds like Shiraz and Grenache and all those varieties, but just doing them less oak, less ripeness, less alcohol, more approachable. Producers are finding ways to adapt to the new way of drinking.
And I think you're also seeing wines released much earlier than they traditionally were, which is great for wineries because gets it out in the market, gets some cash back coming quicker. But people are looking at nouveau, I suppose they call it the nouveau style, less oak, fresh, sort of bright, sort of crunchy red. Again, going back to that chilled red idea, you could certainly do that with anything out of there's styles in the Barossa, there's styles in McLaren Vale as well. And a big nod for McLaren Vale, like that, going back to the direct-to-consumer aspect, like that is a cracking region to visit.
Yeah.
Not just for the wine, but you've got the wine, you've got the, beer, you've got whiskey, you've got the ocean, you've got, gin, you've got, incredible restaurants. It's just a wonderful place.
I want to stick with varieties, but I have a bit of a hot take. I think rosés come off the boil. I think it had a massive boom in the 2010s and everyone had to make a rosé and, they just make it from pressings or bleed off or whatever and, didn't have to put a whole lot of love into it. And I think there's been a bit of a correction and you don't have to make a rosé if that's not your lane. I mean, most people will, but they won't necessarily push it that hard or it won't be the first thing that gets put in your glass at cellar door. I just think people are being a bit more adventurous, like rosé is not a variety, it's a style.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm calling it rosé on the way out for 2025. You heard it here first.
Wow. I think you might be right. Everyone jumped in the boat. Everyone thought, oh, rosé, everyone's doing that. Everyone's got excess reds in the in the vineyard, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So they're sort of like, oh, here's something we can do with it.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's not transportable across every brand.
It looks like it's a catch-all term, rosé, but there's just too much variation. It's confusing for the consumer. I just want milk that tastes like real milk.
Yeah, and I think that's where that Provence style, that colour, people associate with dry. A bit like Riesling back in the day, where people said, "Oh, is it sweet or is it dry?" Well, it's been dry for about 25 years.
Yeah.
That idea that Riesling's sweet, might have been that before I was in the trade, but.
Which is what, 100 years
All right,
ago?
thank you very much. We work with some of the greats of the Clare Valley. If they produce an off-dry Riesling, it is off-dry. Like it's not mistaken with dry Riesling. It is, certainly made in that style.
Yeah. Now, in the way that consumers are interacting with the product, we were being potentially a little bit wine wankery before when we were tasting this mystery wine that we definitely don't know what it is.
No, definitely not.
Do you think that consumers are being less attracted to traditional ways of describing wines and interacting with wines, and wine judges and wine companions?
I think there's probably two speeds. Like there are the people in the wine industry, that's certainly us, who look at wine in a critical way or analytical way. A lot of people just enjoy it. It is becoming more user-friendly, and wineries have to meet their consumer at all different levels. So there's going to be people who, really, really engaged with the story of the wine, the vineyard, when it was picked, how much oak, all that sort of stuff. But a lot of people just want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for wineries to meet people where they're at, talk wine and talk the analytics with some consumers, but then also talk the experience.
What should wineries consider dropping or evolving, John, in terms of their marketing mix, in terms of their product mix, even down to things like packaging?
Alternate packaging or sustainable packaging has been a big conversation for the wine industry over the last 5 years, or probably even longer. And what we're seeing emerge, particularly with a lot of our customers, is going to lightweight glass. Unfortunately, the cask in Australia is very much still seen as a cheaper product.
Yeah, I can't really see Chateau de Cardboard ever aligning with a more premium product.
Going back to what wineries should do more of is channel management, having products in different channels. And this is probably more suited to the larger wineries that we work with, but looking at their products and thinking, okay, where does this sit? And it doesn't always sit in all channels. As we touched on with Barossa Shiraz or richer reds, looking at aligning that with online retail might be a winner versus, your light aromatic whites or lighter reds might be better for on-premise. And then direct to consumer, I think, is a big one. And loyalty of customers is hugely important in this market.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a flavour of the month in e-commerce at the moment, is the loyalty component, which is becoming a lot more accessible for wineries and producers to institute into their e-commerce practices instead of subscription services. Those are still going to have a place, but
absolutely.
Rewarding the customer for making a purchase and purchasing X amount, that's becoming massive at the moment, as that becomes easier to institute.
Absolutely. And people feeling like they're a part of something rather than just a consumer of the winery's wine, but they're a part of the community and the network around that winery that then gets that added benefit of a special bottle or a special discount if they purchase a certain amount. Traditional clubs where you got 6 bottles of Shiraz, 6 bottles of Cabernet every year, and off you go.
If you dare cancel, you're dead to me.
People want to have variation of wines. They want to have whites and reds. They want to have wines for this special occasion. So a lot of wineries we're seeing do a mixed pack, and you'll get one of the icons in there for a special occasion because spread across the cost, it adds $5 to each bottle, and then someone gets an $80 or $100 bottle, which they wouldn't normally purchase. So, it gets them drinking that, and it also gets them showing it off. They'll bring that to a special occasion, Christmas or a birthday, and share that with their friends who then hopefully will engage with the winery as well.
What's something looking forward that wineries should either institute or stop doing to stay relevant with younger drinkers?
I don't think young people have ever drunk wine to huge volumes.
That's my hot take.
There we go.
If you set young person as someone who is below the age of 26 or something, still at uni, unless it's goon, I don't think young people have ever drunk wine en masse. I don't think it's a cause for panic or alarm that you do another study and you find out that, oh my God, 21 to 25-year-olds are not drinking wine. It's like, well, yeah, they're not. They never have.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember my mum telling me that she would visit cellar doors when she was like 19. I didn't visit cellar doors when I was 19. I don't think they did it 50 years ago. So I just don't think that that's a problem.
Certainly something to be aware of, and obviously to engage with these consumers in a way. That goes back to my suggestion about meeting people where they are with their journey on wine. I think the positive thing is young people or younger people are drinking better. So, you know, you're probably a great example. You're a hip man in Melbourne, not quite young, but on the way to not young. And, you know, you're drinking, you know, lovely wines, not just here at work, but when you go out. You know, I've seen the Instagram. It's pretty wild what you're drinking. But, you know, people are drinking, you know, better at younger ages. People are drinking Burgundies. People are drinking Barolo. People are drinking Mornington Pinot. People are drinking Tassie Sparkling at younger age than they certainly were. So that only bodes well for these consumers, yeah.
I want to go back to what you're saying about an opportunity to access younger wine drinkers. We don't have a lot of products that lend themselves to activations at events. You go to the tennis over summer, you go to a music festival, and there'll be the Smirnoff stand. It'll be next to the Red Bull stand, and you get a vodka Red Bull. And you know, there's all these spirits or RTDs that have a massive presence at these kinds of events.
People don't drink wine like they consume other goods. The variation of wines in the marketplace now is overwhelming. The amount of wines we get from New Zealand, from France, from Spain, Georgia, from America. There's just wines from everywhere in Australia. You know, I was lucky to participate in the Wines Victoria forum around selling more wine in the market, and drinking local is a real no-brainer in terms of promotion for Victorian Australian wine at the moment. If we want to sell more wine in Australia, is promote that, drink local, and regionally drink local. If you go to the King Valley, like drink King Valley wines. If you go to the Yarra Valley, drink Yarra Valley wines. You know, that idea where when you're in the region or when you're in that part of the world, you drink the local wines. And I'd like to see that as a trend because, you know, particularly in Victoria, but throughout all the regions of Australia, there is such diversity in product and high quality product that I'd love to see people see Australian wine as highly as they do international wines, which I think is emerging, probably because the international wines are so bloody expensive.
So expensive, can't buy them.
That's right.
If we were looking forward 5 or 10 years, what do you see as something that might pop up?
Going back to that, know your consumer, know as much information about them, about their consuming patterns as you can. And you know, there's various tools for that. We talk to the consumers of wineries every day. It's a big part of what we do. And that provides, again, another layer of getting an understanding of what that customer likes, what that customer doesn't like, even if they don't purchase, which is pretty hard to do on scale if you're a winery. If I was a winery, I'd be getting as much information as I could at cellar door, and then utilizing that information as best you can through all your other channels.
Like Instagram, we run, you know, a plethora of ads on Instagram for all of our clients. There are people for whom that is the easiest way to buy wines. Go to where they want to buy it.
Absolutely. I think it'll be really interesting to see that next group of emerging experts, and whether that's an influencer, whether that's a new critic. Robert Parker similarly was huge in that space. And I think you're seeing it internationally with James Suckling, who not only has a huge, wonderful panel of people reviewing all the wines from the world, but has really big activations, like really big tasting events in Asia and in America. And it's one thing we don't seem to have here. Like, there's not that real celebrity or quasi-wine celebrity character in the market that's people are really attracted to.
I wonder if companies would go to the extent of getting like a social media influencer, as in somebody who has nothing to do with wine.
And Daniel Ricciardo, that's a really interesting one. With Pinot Ricard, they've put a whole bunch of serious production around his products, which I'm sure are fantastic, but also the advertising and placement of them. And obviously they've worked with Endeavour, with the Dan Murphy's business, to make sure that they're very much aligned. They're in the stores, they're making it easy for people to purchase. And I think that's a big key to it too, like that distribution piece. But you might see the ad, but you can also go get it somewhere quite accessibly, which is a big part of it.
We should put a little button on it by trying to figure out
what this wine is. Pinot Noir is probably the least...
Hey.
Well, lighter body reds, maybe this is Pinot Noir, is probably the least common wine for us to see at Brunch. So we work with some of the great wineries of Australia. Very, very lucky. I think we drink more Hunter Valley wines in this office than basically any venue in Melbourne for sure. You know, my previous life was a buyer at Vinamofo. I don't think I bought a Hunter Valley Shiraz in the last 5 years I was with the business, which is probably a reflection of how well it sells, as well as the style. But Hunter Valley Shiraz is fantastic. Yeah, light body, medium bodied sort of style, really savoury, earthy.
Yeah, when the lovely Georgie provided us with a carafe full of very light coloured red wine, that immediately narrowed the options down.
And I'm going to have a stab, and even if I'm wrong, a bit of a plug to a wonderful wine we featured in One Wine recently from Tassie, from Small Wonders. It's a fantastic producer in Tamar River in Tasmania. If you ever see the Block 3 around, it's their top wine. They produce a very small amount. We were lucky to get 3 or 4 dozen for one wine. People talk about sexiness of Pinot Noir. That's a sexy wine. So One Wine, for people who don't know, we have a subscription wine business, which is 1 bottle every month, which we select here as a team. It's a lot of fun. It's more about what we want to drink than and obviously our wonderful subscribers. Yeah, so different wines that we select. We work with a lot of these producers as well, which makes it even more enjoyable. So now I'm told it's not that wine.
Not Tassie, and we're not Victoria.
Is it
We
Pinot?
are Australian. It is a Pinot.
Okay.
Oh, we're Tumbarumba.
Okay.
So cut that Tasmanian stuff out.
Right.
So this is cool climate, super cool climate Pinot Noir, high altitude up in Tumbarumba, up in New South Wales. Again, as I touched on with Hunter, it's great to drink so many New South Wales wines here at Brunch. And we work with some fantastic clients from Orange, from Mudgee, from Hunter as well. It's coming across. So here we go. There we go.
Hungerford Hill,
Yeah.
underground. Okay,
Yeah, so
cool.
it's spinning around there. That's the Hungerford Hill. That's a lovely wine.
And I really thought it was a Tassie Pinot.
At least we got the varietal.
And Georgie, thanks for pouring us some Pinot, because as John said, we don't drink enough of it.
No, not nearly enough.
So John, a few takeaways from our riveting, fantastic, productive chat today. So inns, we're saying low alcohol, moderation overall.
Direct to consumer, look after your market.
Segmentation.
Meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Don't get too caught up in the young people not drinking. But if you've got some limoncello and you want to tip some Prosecco in, there is a product there.
And outs are Pet Nat and goon bags.
Yeah, I love the idea of cask. You know, globally it is a trend, like premium wine in cask. But unfortunately, in the Australian market, I just haven't seen that turn around. As we touched on, like it is going to be a declining market. Like people aren't going to consume as much as they have. We're talking to you during the wonderful tariff times of the Trump second administration. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of tumultuous currency movements and all types of things in the next 2-3 years potentially. So it's going to be a really evolving, really, really quick market. So just stay super aware, stay on top of it, and manage your channels, as we touched on.
And let's say hypothetically some of the listeners had, say, a winery that they were running or producing for. How might we be able to help them through the challenging times that you just mentioned?
Well, a huge amount of options here at Brunch. Brunch Direct jumps to mind. First of all, Australia's leading phone sales option for selling and engaging.
It's the cellar door over the phone, basically.
Absolutely.
It's telling those stories, engaging on products and preferences, and being able to just have good chats. You hear some hilarious long chats about the dog, or, you know, your upcoming holiday or whatever. So it's just a great extension of that cellar door service.
Absolutely. And then, you know, through the marketing suite, we have a studio as well. So for label design, brand refresh, brand redesign. Yeah, another one not to forget is e-commerce and website design. And it's not just the literal website, it's the back end where you get the real muscle, as we sort of touched on with that segmentation. And that's evolving so quickly. And you're seeing some really wonderful platforms out there, which our e-commerce team can talk you through, and they can really elevate and simplify the way you communicate with your customers. And I must admit, I'm not the tech person at Brunch.
Really?
Yeah, well, that's right. That's people who know me would attest to. But the platforms that are out in the market now are so user friendly. These platforms are built not just for the wine industry, which they're fantastic for, but for e-commerce generally. Unfortunately, and this is something that wineries would hate to admit, and if you make it difficult for people to purchase your wine online, they just won't. Gone are the days of filling in a form, faxing it off, waiting 3 weeks for their wine to come. Like, yeah, that might work for some wineries, probably lesser and lesser. People don't have time. They want to be able to do it on their phone. They want to feel that comfort and that security purchasing with a platform they've purchased before. That's a big part of what we do. If there's any questions that arise from this or any other conversations you hear on this podcast, just give us a call. Like, we're very proud, very passionate wine people, and we're happy to help. Like, whether it's it's a service that we provide, or some expertise, or some advice, we're happy to lend our ear.
Come back next week. We've got the lovely Amber, KB, and Maddie Jones running us through social media that sells. what actually works for wineries. So we'll leave the expertise up to them.
Thanks, Bondi.
John.
And thanks, Georgie. Well done.
Some Tassie Pinot.
Some Tassie, that's right. Small Wonder is a small producer. Oh, I'm getting
Oh, getting the
I'm getting the shake of the head, so it's
Oh,
not.
Teach us
Stop that.
how's the hubris?
Oh, I know. Stop that. Oh, we have to pull this whole thing off.
What other Pinot do we have in the Alsace?